He did not leave, but rather stay in forth. Was he, however, bitter? Was he angry? And did his speeches reflect this?
I don't believe in speeches which are acrimonious. I don't provoke confrontation. I try to be as respectful as I possibly can to the other person. I grow to appreciate that my view is not the only view, that there's always another point of view. And I am tolerant, matured, and composed to accommodate ideas and to sift rather those ideas out. And though I vehemently disagree sometimes, I hardly ever lose my temper. And I don't think politics is something for war. Express your view, make your points, articulate your ideas, but do it without acrimony. And I would like to give that advice even at this moment. During the opposition days, I spoke on virtually all subjects. All subjects. I think our number in the National Assembly had reduced ridiculously to about 8 or something like that one time. And people were saying, don't go back to the parliament. Dr. Jagan used to say, our battle is constitutional, and the parliament is the place for us to let our voices be heard. We had moments when we stopped, when we stayed out, when we discussed, go or don't go, participate or don't participate. I went through all those things. But ultimately, we went there and we stayed and we battled. Even when Dr. Jagan was prevented from speaking for 4 years. I was talking to Comrade Janet the other day, and he said, Reep, it's true, it's 4 years. I said, Comrade Janet, I was there. I was opposition chief whip at that time. I know it's 4 years. I remember on one occasion, he was prevented from voting, and I jumped to my feet, and I cited the relevant standing order to the speaker to point out to him that he could not do that. He had no such power. And unless a member is suspended, he has the right to vote. You might say he didn't catch your eye to allow him to speak, but you can't deny him the right at the division to vote. And he had to change that position and allow the vote. Hansard will reflect that. So that period, I dealt with everything you can think about. I spoke on legal questions. I remember one minister, several years after, Reep, you're not a lawyer? I said, I'm not, I'm a humble man. You're not a lawyer, Reep? But how you decide all them legal points? I say, I am not a lawyer. But I used to sit and at night go through all the bills, study all the clauses, be au fait with all the implications. So when I contribute in the opposition, I do it in a manner that is objective and factual.
Reepu is a very humble man, and that humility really masks the depth of his knowledge in many things, not least of all the parliamentary process. I'm always impressed by his calmness. He seems to be a calm person. I've seen him lose his temper on a couple of occasions, but not more than a couple of occasions. But although sometimes he is provoked, he manages to keep his cool and to respond in a very rational way. And I'm really impressed by that, because here's a man who's had a very long career as a parliamentarian, who, in my estimation, would have made a marvelous Speaker of the Assembly. So knowledgeable is he really in parliamentary procedure. Here's a man whose width of knowledge goes beyond his own particular field. If that field is agriculture or is religion, he has a kind of a universal knowledge of things, and he brings that knowledge to bear in a discussion with a remarkable degree of calmness and sanity and rationality.
I would say he's the best parliamentarian because we have a very tricky situation in Guyana. And he is the person who calls the sittings of parliament. To do so, he has to do a lot of consultations prior to every sitting, and he interfaces with all the various political parties. So besides this more or less diplomatic effort, he is well au fait with parliamentary procedures, well au fait with the law. One thing to note about Reepu Daman Persaud, which he hardly tells anybody, he is actually a lawyer, a self-taught lawyer. And he understands the law even better than people who have the necessary academic qualifications. I have heard him, I've seen him advising even attorneys general. There have been several attorneys general in the Pacific government. He's advised them, showed them where a certain course of action is to be taken, and they have normally followed his advice. And he has even been advising, to a great extent, the clerk of the National Assembly as to the procedures involved in getting bills through, in resolving parliamentary impasses and things like that. So he's a very knowledgeable person. Yeah, his knowledge is encyclopedic where parliamentary procedures are concerned. And this is not actually because he's a colleague. He's respected as such even by the opposition people.
And then in 1992, the eve of his 40th year after having met Dr. Jagan in 1953, it was victory for Dr. Jagan and his supporters. Pandit Reepu Daman Persaud became the Honorable Minister of Agriculture. Was this the end? Not for him, not for his colleagues, certainly not for Dr. Jagan. This was rather the beginning, a challenge of another sort. It was former Prime Minister of India, Rajiv Gandhi, who wrote, "Development is not just about factories, dams and roads. Development is basically about the people. The goal is in the people's material, cultural and spiritual fulfillment. The human factor, the human context is of supreme value. We must pay much great attention to these questions. Literacy is an indispensable component of human resource development. It is an essential tool for communication and training, for acquiring and sharing of knowledge and information, a precondition for an individual's evaluation and the growth for all for national development." But was Pandit Reepu Daman Persaud up to these challenges, the challenges of development for which he had been in training for so many years? But now in retrospect, after all that has passed, what were his greatest contribution in his ministry for nation building?
He has distributed a lot of lands. From the time he came to office there, we got down towards satisfying the land hunger of the people. And if Reepu Daman Persaud is to be remembered for anything, it's for the lands he has given to the ordinary farmer, the rice farmers, the ground provision farmers, the other cash crop people, and the drainage and irrigation facilities he has put down.
I was given the Ministry of Agriculture. Sea defense came under me. Drainage and irrigation came under me. And when I took the ministry as minister, the sea defenses started collapsing. My first experience was the collapse of the sea defense at Three Friends, Alliance, Colombia, on the Essequibo coast. And when I heard what had happened, I asked myself what I should do. I was a brand new minister. I had experience because I was involved in agriculture and so on. And I thought that I must go to Essequibo. And I went. And this in itself was a relief to the people who lived here. First time they saw a minister so quickly at a time of tragedy and sufferings. I spoke with them, consoled them, and we started building. And that experience did not end with Essequibo. In several parts of the country, the sea defenses started collapsing. Drainage and irrigation was non-existing. Everything was in chaos. We had to virtually build from scratch. There was not a single machinery to do anything.
His thrust was to take up as many lands as possible for agricultural purposes. He fulfilled, I will not say that any minister will fulfill his position 100%, but Rip tried his best, and I think I will rate him as 90%.
For successful agriculture, water control was a prerequisite. It was in my time rather, that the Drainage and Irrigation Board came back into being so that you could organize and have proper monitoring of the whole D&I system countrywide. That you should ensure that there are markets for produce so that your production will be influenced by the availability of markets and prices. That you should have an active and vibrant marketing unit to ensure that the produce are sold. Those were some of the things that came out very clearly when I was there as minister.
As a Minister of Agriculture, in his own calm way, he saw to it that agriculture earned the deserved place within national development. You know, he handled his portfolio well. I know he has also had to deal not only with agriculture as agriculture, but on those things that impinge upon agriculture. For example, drainage and irrigation. He surprised, I must confess that he surprised us time and again with his insightful knowledge about drainage and irrigation, you know, about the price for produce, about marketing, quite apart from the knowledge about how the rice crop was doing in particular parts of the country, or what were the hopes and fears of the sugar industry. So he did a very good job in his own quiet and modest way. He's a man who made me eat curried milk for the first time. Okay. Yeah, we were in cabinet, it was lunchtime, and I think I was chairing, so there was a lull in the cabinet. So I said to him, you know, he's a vegetarian. I said, what are you having for lunch? He said, curry milk. So I said, curry milk? How on earth can you cook curry milk? I had this vision of people throwing curry in the milk, you know. And he said, you want to see it? I said, yes. And he shared his curried milk with me. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, I mean, and he did it so very naturally. All right, that's the first time in my life I had curried milk. And this is about 5-6 years ago. But he was like that, you know. If I was sitting near to him or across him and his food arrived, his vegetarian thing arrived ahead of time, he would look in my direction and raise a quizzical eyebrow, you know, that you want some? So very extremely human, but extremely natural, you know. So, and I think that in a real sense, this really is characteristic of the man. It's very human and very natural and very understanding, you know, almost like a father to younger men and a brother to those of us who are around his own age.
I'd like to say to Pandit Ji, it has been a pleasure to be a part of stating publicly how much I view him, and many like me have viewed him in this country. Hope he will live a long life so that he will continue his work for the development not only of the Hindu religion, but for the complete development of Guyana.
While Pandit Reepu Daman Persaud continues his work successfully as a politician, let us not forget that as a Pandit he began his career when he was just 8. His father being ill, he was sent off, a little boy, to read his first Jandi, which asked the question, does the fish soar to find the ocean, the eagle plunge to find the air, that we ask of the stars in motion if they have rumor of thee there? And so it is. In January of 1974, Pandit Reepu Daman Persaud and the Guyana Hindu Dharmic Sabha was everywhere across Guyana, bringing comfort, bringing religious knowledge to their devotees even in times of difficulties.
Sometimes when difficulties and problems grip us, so परत दुख पावही, उसके बाद हम क्या करते हैं? सिर धुनी धुनी पछताए,
We hit our heads against the wall. We look for answers. We look for solutions. And sometimes we do look for excuses. उसके बाद हम क्या करते हैं? What do we say? This time is like that. Might be right. Another one comes. It is destiny. And a third one comes, as I refer to it on two separate nights of this earth. He is sure that he is God. Whatever the reason, I want to urge you that your today is in your hand. Your tomorrow is in your hand. Your now is in your hand, and your future is in your hand.